At the moment, there are 3 participants. You've only got, 2 minutes. And I think it's, yeah, it sounds like it's.
Yeah, we can start and then Kathy.
Okay.
1 second. So I must be.
Your microphone. Go.
Feedback.
Yeah.
Can I be heard?
We have not started the meeting yet, so please be patient.
Yep, thank you.
One of you is broadcasting on, we're rehearing you sometimes, so please be careful to not have your volume up too loud so that our microphones pick it up and rebroadcast it, please.
Understood.
Yeah, we can start the meeting. Shall I start with roll call?
Call the meeting to order? Yes, go ahead.
Kim Morris.
Present.
Kathy Macho is absent. Sue Stewart.
Present.
John Leo. Here. Ron Turner is on Zoom. So he's
Present.
Jamie Jenkins.
Here.
Bob Buckner. Here. All right, we have a quorum. The first thing on the agenda is the minutes from February 14th. That was part of the packet. I will say that I did have a correction. I had the attendance correct, but then in the motions, I had included Kathy Machel as participating when she was not at the meeting. So that is something that I've already made a correction since the minutes that you have received. So if anybody has reviewed those and would like to offer comment, I would also like to point out, probably not needed for today's meeting, but one of the new features that we have since the ZBA last met are these microphones. So in cases, especially when there's more people in the audience, there's a button on the microphone, you can turn that microphone on and then speak, and we have speakers in the back to help people hear for larger meetings. So.
I didn't notice anything else in the minutes. Did anybody else?
No, a year later, I didn't. I'd make a
Exactly
motion
the way I
to approve.
remembered.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approval of minutes?
Hey, Kathy's here. Yay.
Okay, we just started. Okay,
I have it.
yep. The first thing on the agenda is to elect a chair for 2025. Bob Como was the chair for the Planning ZBA for many years. And he was not renewed for his term here. We do have some other new members joining us. Bob Buckner is new. He was appointed at some point last year. Yep. And then we also have Ron Turner, who is on Zoom with us, and Janie Jenkins as new members. So, Janie Jenkins and Bob Buckner are alternates. Kathy Machel is the city council representative. So those three would be the ones not able to be appointed as the chair. Anybody else could act as the chair if someone is willing and would like to take that responsibility.
Nominate Sue.
She checked with me first. It's okay.
Okay.
I will second. And thank you.
Roll or just an eye, Jeff?
You can do let's do an all in favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So, Sue, the meeting is yours. And if you have any questions on process, please let me know.
Okay.
It has been a year since we've met, so I'm sure we're all a little rusty.
I did not bring my paper packet with me. Oh, good, somebody else did. I don't write things well right now. So at this point, we are taking public comment and correspondence, and that is on anything that we're not considering later in the agenda. Is that correct?
Correct. So this will be the opportunity for anybody that has any thoughts, concerns, or questions about anything not on the agenda. Normally, we open that up to people that are here at the meeting, and then we would move on to people that are attending via Zoom. And for the Zoom people that are here, there is an icon where you can raise your hand, and then we'll see that and we'll call out your name and ask you to unmute your microphone at that time.
Good. Do we have any public comment, Michelle?
Anybody online? Okay.
All right, on to new and old business. We have elected the chair. We have a schedule to approve. Would you put the schedule up on the screen? I think there was a final date on that that looked like it was not right, because look at the last date.
That's today. Oh,
That's today.
that should read 2026.
Yeah.
And we will certainly get that correct. These dates are the second Wednesday of each month. The other thing to note is the application deadline, which is generally the day of the meeting of the previous meeting. And the application deadline is noon of that day. So that January 2026 should read January 14th. And I will get that corrected.
Deal. Next, I'm sorry, what do we need to do to approve that schedule?
Well, unless you have any questions or you'd like to have a discussion about it, a motion to approve the schedule as corrected.
Okay.
I move to approve the schedule as corrected.
I'll second.
All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
I'm sorry, Jeff, what did you say the Monday for January? The January meeting would be Monday, I'm sorry, it's
January 2026 for the year 2026.
right.
On the schedule, we list at the end, Wednesday, January 8th, 2025.
Right.
And that should be our first meeting in January 2026, which would be the 14th, which is the second Wednesday of the month.
Wednesday, January 14th, 2026 is what the last entry on the first column should be.
That's
I
what
just wanted to
that,
make sure I hadn't heard the date.
that's what that should read.
And on the second column, the date is correct. It's the date of the previous meeting.
Correct.
So, yeah.
So we're good. Thank you.
Okay, turning now to the review of the zoning board of appeals bylaws.
There was nothing new in the bylaws. Sometimes we'll get some suggested corrections from the city attorney based on changes to the zoning enabling act for the state of Michigan. There's nothing new in that. These are the bylaws that we operated under for 2024. If anybody has any questions or concerns or would like feedback from the city attorney on potential changes to those, today would be the opportunity to have a discussion and make a recommendation for a review or potential change.
Anyone here have a, Janie?
Nope.
Ron?
No, not I. I'm still looking for the icon that says I can raise my hand.
Oh. We'll ask you.
Don, I think we've left you unmuted, so feel free to join the conversation at any point. And just some background information, as Ron is a member of the CBA, he is able through Zoom to participate in discussion. However, the state of Michigan has rules regarding voting, and because he's not present in the room, he's not able to participate in any voting.
Okay, at this point, we turn to the public hearing on the dimensional variance request, 661 East Bluff Drive. I think this is an opportune time for me to say I will recuse myself from this because I grew up next door to that property. My mother lived there until Michelle finished her house, and the people who now own 661 are close family friends. So I know the neighborhood and the neighbors, but I'm happy to join the discussion as appropriate, but I won't vote.
That seems appropriate, and I would say that we should start this off with a motion to open the public hearing to hear any feedback from the applicants or any members of the public that would like to participate in conversation.
I move we open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Public hearing is now open.
So at this point, I'll start us off. Let me just pull up their site plan and put this on the screen. Size. I wish I had a pointer and I don't, I apologize. We can see on the drawing this outer dashed line here is the property line. And this line here is the setback line. I don't believe that there's any proposed changes to the section of the property on the west, which is currently an existing nonconformity, and that's able to be maintained. They can keep that. We don't have to discuss that today. They have an existing brick patio, which isn't proposed to be changed. The section that we have that's under for discussion tonight is this covered porch addition, which extends past the setback line here in the front of the house. And we can see that the proposed extension extends 5 feet past the setback line, but is still approximately 19 feet from the front property line. And that's the portion that they are requesting that they get a variance so that they can add. And Michelle Crizel is the architect working on this project, and she can provide further information and answer questions as needed tonight. So Michelle, if you have anything to add.
I think the application is pretty self-explanatory. It's a pretty common ask, at least in my experience over the last few years. This is a home that was built prior to zoning. It's been there a long time. Owners would like to enjoy a covered porch on the south side of the house, which also happens to be the front. It's confusing perhaps to people who don't live along that way, but Mrs. Irish made that very clear to me that this is the front of the house because that is the address, is East Bluff, so that's the front door. Obviously that's a beautiful place to hang out, but it does receive a lot of sunshine. So they'd like a front porch, like many of their neighbors. You know, I'll just mention it was a rocky year for zoning in Harbor Springs. I don't know if anybody was aware of that.
Was it now?
Had heard that.
This was one of those projects that was slightly impacted by that, but regardless, the setback currently is 25 feet in this zone. Right, it's one of the many different residential zones, and yeah, so we would have to encroach into that setback about 5 feet to make this happen.
What's the total dimensions of the porch?
So I think I have the drawing. It's a 10-foot porch, but that would be to the outside of the columns. So the columns take up about a foot of that. And I will say that it's maybe slightly larger than what I would call a minimum porch, but we are also going to include railing, even though railing isn't required at this height. Just for safety purposes for the owners, so they don't step off the porch inadvertently.
Okay, I see 20 feet across the front.
Yep.
The
and
depth
10 feet.
is where? 10 feet.
Have there been any objections from neighbors about this proposed development?
You do have 2 pieces of correspondence in front of you. A couple of the neighbors did come in and take a look at the plans. There is a note here that was provided from Ann Irick, which is neighbor to the east. Noting that she is in favor of it. You do have one other piece of correspondence from another property owner in town that was not in favor of the project.
And I talked to the neighbors to the west, Nancy and Bill Gurney, and they're fine with it.
And how, maybe Michelle can address this. The Gurney's porch is, how will this compare to the Gurney's porch in terms of how far south it extends?
So closer to the road. So if you, I don't know if you had a chance to drive by the property, I did the stakes up, but when I was placing those, I did note, yes, Gurney's is further. Now the road angles as well, so it's all relative to the road, but the Gurney porch is further.
Gurney's is
south.
significantly closer to the
Yeah.
road.
Yeah, I
Oh, yeah.
drove by and eyeballed it today, and that's,
Back, but she has a much larger parcel too, and we have the room to do that for
Yeah,
her.
this is more comparable to the Gurney's.
And I think Leithorn's next north are also close to the road, much closer than this to the road. And then I think after that, it's more.
Further back, and then that's the other next house, east. And Irish is a little bit closer than 669, but
It's where Ron Turner used to live. So he can speak to details of that house if it were necessary. It probably isn't, but he knows the neighborhood.
I'm sure it's within that setback because it's current. But
Yeah.
so this extends beyond the setback line, 10 feet?
It extends past the setback line by 5 feet, 3.5 inches.
Oh, okay,
Yep.
I'm sorry,
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, we can see on the drawing there, the setback line is that dashed line that kind of runs through the middle of the porch. And then Michelle has drawn in the distance that the porch is extending past that setback. And she's also included the distance from the edge of the porch to the property line as well. So we have an idea of what type of front yard will be left if this variance is approved.
Yes. In regards to the letter from Mr. Tarczynski about the question about the aesthetics and I guess I'm looking at his comments and I'm looking at this picture and I'm not sure I see what he's referring to. Are
We
you?
haven't, with the letter, so I don't know what.
It says the heavy timbers on the proposed porch, and I just. It doesn't look from the drawing like the timbers are any different from the character of the rest of the house.
Or the neighborhood, I mean, it was.
On the north side of the house, at the entry, and also some brackets. It's kind of the style of the home.
Yeah,
We did look at doing a more low profile covered porch, but really because of the way that those roof lines work, it just made the most sense to extend the existing roof line out to kind of simplify water and snow management. And the clients liked the idea of kind of emphasizing the timbers that are already on the house by adding these. So that's a personal aesthetic choice.
There's really nothing in the zoning code addressing aesthetics, though.
That's right. We should be
So
careful
that's
to,
not
yeah.
necessary.
Yeah.
we should be careful to not make decisions based on architectural design because we do not have architectural design standards in the code.
Okay.
Can I ask a question about the construction of those beams?
Absolutely, Ron.
I'm just curious, will there be poured footings? How are they
Yes.
anchored to
Yeah.
the ground?
No, absolutely. The building code would require that we have footings that go down to frost depth here, and those columns will be mechanically fastened to the foundation. Because particularly for porches, in the building code, you have to make sure that we're not creating a situation where the wind's gonna wanna pick it up and move it. So we have a lot of things that we have to do to make sure that that doesn't happen. And
Thank you.
Include the foundation.
As part of the process, were the neighbors in the area informed of this request for variance?
Absolutely. Anytime that we
Okay.
do a request, and that's partly why we have a 1 month lead time on the application deadline.
Gotcha. Okay,
We both put a notice in the paper and we send out a mailing of that notice to all property owners within 300 feet.
okay, and these were the only responses then?
Correct.
Got it.
And you can see actually the one response from Miss Iris, she wrote it right on the notice and sent back in, so we can see that she received it. on the-
And John was nice enough to report back from the Gurneys who are directly on the other
Right, I
side,
heard,
you
yeah.
know, the very close side of that house there.
Could I make another comment?
Please.
And maybe it's none of our business. But this is a 1-lane road. And I'd be concerned, I don't live there any longer, of the construction traffic. I'd like to see the contractors park on Pine Street just to relieve some of the traffic on East Bluff. The large delivery trucks, of course, they have to come down. I'm assuming they're gonna either back down or back out. But you still have 4 homes at the dead end. There's no turnaround on this street. And the folks living at the dead end do not come off of Pine Street. So they're gonna be coming and going. And along that same note, if you're gonna have deliveries, I guess I'd rather see them come off of Arbor Street then try and go down Oak and make the left-hand turn. They just invariably cut across someone's lawn or someone's corner there is just too narrow to make a turn with a big sod delivery truck or lumber being delivered, or shingle, I guess, is another big truck that would come in. And the last comment would be, these delivery folks, contractors, should be mindful that under the grass, the nice, beautiful lawns that people enjoy, there's an irrigation system. And sometimes when I used to live there, it used to irritate me that people would pass another car on the grass because there's no asphalt left to drive on to go around, or else they park on the grass, and they're doing a lot of damage conceivably to the irrigation system. So for all it's worth, I make those comments.
Thank you, Ron. Let's see. At what point do we close the public hearing and go to member comments? Would this be a good time?
We do have two other people online on Zoom, and one of them did mention at the beginning of the meeting, you know, they wanted to say something, so. If they'd like to take an opportunity, I'll ask them to unmute. First, we have Artistic. Boy, I'm not sure if I'm gonna pronounce that right, but if they'd like to unmute, and participate in the conversation. And we also have Garen. If I'm pronouncing that right,
Garen Gopigian?
if they'd like to participate in the conversation. I think we're good.
So I would make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second,
Motion's been made and seconded to close the public hearing. All in favor?
aye.
Any opposed? Public hearing is closed, and we move on to member comments. Any questions?
I could start. I went through the neighborhood and some have porches, some don't. It's a good mixture. My concern is this is a deeper porch than most of them. And, you know, if we can set that back a couple feet and eliminate some of the problems with the setback, I would feel more comfortable with it. But I do feel everybody has a right to the front porch. That's part of Harbor Springs.
Well, particularly a front porch with the view that they have.
Yeah. Those are my comments.
I may have missed this, but how long have they lived here, or did they just move in?
This was a recent purchase. So again, Irish built the house next door and she had been living in that during construction. And so once she moved out, she sold this home. And they are, I was gonna say snowbirds, but they're not here in the winter.
So they're out battling the fires. They live right where one of the fires is right now, so they may be more than, maybe here a little more, who knows?
Yeah.
I would just add that one of the reasons my mother bought that property when it became available was because the lot lines had been so thoroughly, I don't know, rearranged by the neighbor. And she bought it in part to rectify some of the problems with the lot lines and did what she could on her side of the property to put those back where they should have been, and back so that there are fewer nonconformities with that property than there were before. It's, as houses in that neighborhood go, it's in pretty good shape.
My feeling is that in the context of the setbacks of some of the other houses that are there that were built some time ago, long before there was zoning, I don't think this is an unreasonable request. And, you know, provided the fact that it's not going to be particularly burdensome to the neighbors, I think it's a reasonable request.
I was also, maybe I should have asked before, the width, the lot seems very quite narrow. Am I correct? So there is no room on the sides of the house
Oh, no,
for any kind of, if I'm reading map drawing correctly.
right. And
Okay.
as Sue mentioned earlier, part of the lot lines being corrected helped on the north end, which is not part of this discussion, but the driveway on the north side, but you're right, no, there's nowhere to go.
Thank you.
Another complication that typically comes up, and I see this both on bluff properties, in Weequahic, pretty much anywhere where there's a view. We can also look at the lot lines in comparison to the house. And the house is positioned appropriately to get the best view of the lake and parallel with the street. But we can see that the lot itself is angled slightly. And so you get the corners that are at odds. So, and that's another thing that has typically come up in previous discussion.
I agree with Bob. I think it's a very reasonable request, congruent with the rest of the neighborhood and the use of the property. And it won't even be the one that's closest to the road. That's right. I think it's very reasonable.
Also, the house next door is slightly up higher, and that is not gonna impede them at all in their view. I thought, when I looked at it, I thought that was okay. And, and then the house to the east also is quite a bit, there's the Gurney's house.
Gurney's are just to the west.
So they're the west, oh, that's the
Where's
Gurney's
this-
house.
That sticks out, yes.
Okay, the one that's up high.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then, and the other one is closer to the road, so I thought,
Oh, sorry, the other way around. The one that's closer to the road is Gurney's.
Yeah.
And then,
Very good.
yeah, so I thought the same thing.
I would just want to say, and I believe when I was on the CBA a couple of years ago, we had at least one or two porch requests. And it doesn't seem to me that this is out of line with anything. It wasn't on East Bluff, it was different streets, but this is still a good ways back from the property line. So I don't see any issue with it.
That actually brings up a good point. Is the comparison of the porch to other properties in the area was certainly something that the ZBA has taken into consideration in the past. From the previous discussions that the ZBA has had with front yard setbacks and how we arrived at the decision to grant or not a variance based on the proximity of other homes, this certainly looks like it falls in line with the other decisions. The other thing that I would like to add is it has been typical procedure in the past to prevent creep of porches being enclosed and turning into living room areas, which then necessitates another variance request for a porch. The ZBA has in the past typically asked if a condition would be appropriate and placed a condition on that if the porch was a variance is granted for the porch, that there would be a condition that it could not be enclosed in the future. So I would encourage you to have that discussion with the applicant or the applicant's representative.
Oh, the clients are very open to that. We discussed it.
Does that need to be in any motion to approve this then?
If you feel it's appropriate, then
Okay.
you could phrase your motion something to the, objective of motion to approve based on that it meets the requirements of practical difficulty with the condition that it be not enclosed in the future.
Well, I would make that motion.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
I mean, you just worded it. Perfect.
Perfectly.
So I like. I'll second.
And that was Bob that seconded.
Sir.
And I think we should do a roll call on this vote. Sue?
No, can I just go straight around the table? I don't have to do it in alphabetical order.
I'll call up the names for you if you'd like.
Good, yeah.
Let's start with Bob Buckner. Aye. Janie Jenkins.
I,
John Leo.
Yes.
Sue Stewart.
I'm
Oh,
not
you're
voting.
recusing. Thank you. Kathy Marshall
Aye.
and Kim Morris. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Just keep the contractors.
Do my best.
Over the years, that road has seen a lot.
Yeah, and this is a small project.
I mean,
Compared to
delivery of
others.
material, that's good.
They should probably take advantage of.
Oh,
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. So at this point, do we step through the findings of fact sheet? Do we need to?
I think we covered most of the discussion on that during our review. What I would recommend in the future, if we have questions about practical difficulty, the appropriate time to review the findings of fact, go through that, would be when we've closed the public hearing
And we want to
and we're,
open.
and we're,
Okay.
you're discussing amongst yourselves to determine whether or not there is a practical difficulty.
Okay. Good.
Jeff, would you, on this dimension variance decision tab, would you make sure you change the name of the chair on the back? It's a couple chairs ago.
Yeah, I think, didn't I, when I printed out the copy that I passed out, I don't think I included that sheet.
Well, the one in the document that
Oh,
you sent in your email, or you referenced, had the wrong chairperson.
I'm gonna modify that document. I'm gonna trim down that first page. I don't think we need, and the last page, I don't think we need. I think I'll just go with the two middle pages, which are the actual findings of fact portion. That's really the portion that we've been using. So
I think we did cover all the bullets that are in.
I agree.
And we ended up at allowed with condition.
Yeah, correct. That's what the motion that John made was. Or I had praised it and he liked it, so he wasn't. Right.
Good. Do you need anything further from us?
The only thing I would add is we will have a February meeting, so please keep that date open in your calendar. That will be on February 14th.
February 12th is what you said.
Well,
That's the Wednesday.
I'm getting my calendar out.
It is the 12th. I have that wrong on the agenda and I apologize.
Okay.
So.
You just had your mind set on romance, Jeff. Totally focused.
Oh, good
Oh,
one.
is that it?
Good one.
Hey, Jeff, excuse me, folks. We didn't talk about lighting. Is this thing gonna be lit? Is it gonna have floodlights on the front? Is it gonna have electrical?
From looking at the picture, they have a nice rendering showing, and it's on my screen right now. not
Yeah,
sure
I'm
if
looking
it's-
at it.
So it looks like they have, on one of the pillars there, some sort of a outdoor light fixture that looks to have some enclosure on it. I don't see anything, with any more expanded lighting. I would think that there may be some, when they do this project and move forward with the actual construction, they will still have to submit a zoning application where they'll submit these plans, maybe some updated stuff with a little bit more information. And I will review that at that time to make sure that it complies with our zoning regulations. Part of that will be lighting. So Michelle and I can have a conversation about that and make sure that everything that's done at that time meets all the requirements of the zoning code.
Is Harbor Springs opposed to, I mean, we all used to have floodlights years ago, but many communities now are going with this dimmer lighting. Doesn't bother the neighbors and actually doesn't throw off much light. Do we have a lighting preference in town?
We do. So there's two things I can bring up to that effect. The first would be the actual language in the zoning code. And we state that in a couple of different places that lighting shall be shielded and directed away from neighboring properties. Different light fixtures achieve that in different ways. But we have a policy on how we handle that to make sure that we're minimally affecting neighboring properties with their lighting. Another thing, and this is more of a kind of a social standard thing, I guess, would be Emmett County and I believe all the municipalities within have kind of grouped together in support of the whole dark sky movement. Which then also proposes that we don't have floodlights that are just broadcasting light in all directions. And our zoning code has language in it right now to help make sure that we're not negatively impacting neighbors. Nothing is perfect, especially with lighting, but we do have some language there to help.
All right, thank you.
If there's no further business and no more comments,
You have the ability to adjourn the meeting.
Adjourn?
We don't need a motion.
we stand adjourned.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.